This is a quick guide on the 3 most common mistakes GCSE students make with their compositions. Number 1 is they don't know what key they're working in. So these kind of tables are very easy to find, and if you're at Bishop's you can find them all on the L drive. They're under the GCSE Composition Bible document. You need to know what key you're working in, and you need to concentrate on making sure that you use primarily the root, the third and the fifth in your chord changes. Now, you can put these in any order into any length you like, but I recommend, as you are starting out, you concentrate on 4-bar chord sequences and you end up with something like this. Here I've done a typical 4-bar chord sequence using 4 different chords. Doesn't have to be 4 different chords. You could do chord 1 all the way through if you wanted to, but it's going to be difficult to get higher levels if you do that. And you could be chords repeated interspersed with other chords. There are a million different options, but this is very common at the moment. And I've gone for the primary chords. I've made sure chord 1 is in there. I've made sure chord 4 is in there, chord 5 is in there, and chord 6 is in there. We call those the primary chords. And this is a fairly typical order. It doesn't have to be in this order, but it's fairly standard for the moment. Now, the first thing, so make sure you've got a key, make sure that you've got a chord sequence and it's documented somewhere that you know what it is. You've decided on your chord sequence and you're happy with it, you've got it documented, you can refer back to it. You need to have a go at programming it in. Now, I've done a really basic version of this. So it's, I've clicked it in because I haven't got a keyboard at home. Here are those triads. Here is the A, C and E from chord 6. I'll just go back and show you those ones. So there's the A, the C and the E. And go back to logic. And here is the G, the B and the D. The C, the E and the G from chord 1. And the F and the A and the C from chord 4. I've clicked those in. At the moment, they're all in root position. The second most common problem that GCSE students have is they're not in time, they're not exactly lining up to the rhythm that you want. And sort of part B of that is you guys don't include the root note in the bass line to start with. Now, there are a million different ways of changing all this, but this is the very basics. So, once you've got everything clicked in, you make sure you've got all the right notes and that your bass line is the root note underneath. I'd really recommend just doing this on 1 keyboard channel to start off with, so you've got a definitive version, and then it'll be easier later on to split stuff up. This sounds pretty good like this, but it's got some issues. So, fairly standard now, no problems. We've got the root in the bass line, and we've got the chords on top. All the triads are correct. We've made sure that we've got a chord sequence, we know exactly what it is. We've got it documented, we know what key we're working in, and we've put in 1 chord per bar at the moment, and it's sounding pretty decent. The next thing which students make a mistake at is they have all of these in root position. So this is a chord 6, the root note of chord 6 in C major is an A, and it's at the bottom of the chord. And then that's the root note of that chord, and that's the root note of that chord, if I can click it, there we go. And that's the root note of chord 4. We end up with this sort of parallel movement, and it's a bit cumbersome, particularly on sustained periods if you're repeating it over and over and over. So what we want to do is use inversions. That's the solution there. We can also preempt another problem. Very often GCSE students, when they start adding other instruments, have everything in this kind of range, so we can't hear the melodies which go on top. So we've put our bass line well out of the way, doing root notes at the moment down the bottom. We want to take this note out of the way that's going to get in the way of the vocals or instrument that's playing the melody line later on. Now logic is telling me that's an E. This couldn't be simpler. We're going to drag it down an octave. Just about made it. Now, we don't have to do that to every chord. There's no need. But I could do it here because I've got two voices all of a sudden sticking out over the top. So I want to get that one at least out of the way. Logic is telling me that it's a G. Whatever DAW you're using, it will probably have a similar function. Okay. And now if we look at our ear is always drawn to the top line the most. We've got an interesting shape going on there, look. We could take that F off the bottom and stick it on top. Let's have a listen to that. Now it's got some strength. It's got those last two chords there, it's got what we call contramotion. We got, if the bass line is going down or descending, it's a good idea to have the melody line or an internal part going up. But that's also a little bit predictable. So I'm going to put that back down at the bottom. Now some of those chords are in root position. Root position. Root position. There is nothing wrong with root positions as long as we get a mix. Let's see what that sounds like. And I like it when it repeats. That's only one note's difference if you look. So there's only one note's difference there, and that makes it quite cohesive, quite fluent. You have to make these kind of aesthetic decisions yourself. That's the important thing. Okay, so number one, know what your chord change is and what key you're working in. Number two, make sure everything's in time and that you've put the bass line down the bottom. And then number three, you must use inversions to break up that sort of parallel movement all the time.